Shattering Glass, Chapter 21. Break up? We didn't break up. He gave me away. Rana Perry. I called Debbie Mann. I took her out for pizza, knowing we'd be seen by plenty of our friends. I planned to go to a movie, but Debbie suggested we rent a video and go to her house. Her parents were out. We did some heavy breathing on the den couch, and Debbie tendered the offer she was famous for. Making feeble excuses, I turned her down. I could be a shit, but not a slut. Besides, I knew that Debbie would tell all her friends that we had made it. Debbie prized prowess over reputation. I left, depressed and guilt ridden. Rana would hear as soon as she stepped through her front door. Rana didn't call. She faced me down in person. Young, Rana's here. My mother appeared at the door. She was holding a book, one finger saving her place. Okay, Mom, I'll be right down. She seems upset, Young. Is something amiss with you two? Amiss? My mom actually talks like that. Sort of. We need to talk alone. The sun is peeking through for the first time in days. Why don't you sit in the garden? I trudged downstairs and my heart did a crazy tap dance when I saw her. Rana stood with one foot planted and the other raised on the toes, pivoting the heel right, then left. She looked tense and pale. She raised her eyes. I don't know why I'm here exactly. I do, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Let's go out back and talk. She nodded and stepped past me through the living room, out of the French doors. The Victorian knot garden, my mother's obsession, had a small fountain with cherubs sprouting water from puckered lips. Rana assessed the manicured shrubs. This is beautiful. I shrugged and avoided her eyes by feigning interest in the surroundings. I nodded at the fountain. I don't know why anyone thinks fat babies spitting water is considered cool, but my mother says it's enchanting. Rana sat down, perched on the edge of a wrought iron love seat. I'm sort of out of my element here. Bet you don't play much croquet on this lawn. I laughed. It sounded hollow. No driving wickets in this lawn. Getting bare patches will send my mother into cardiac arrest. Rana put the tip of her tongue up against her top lip and lowered her head. She looked up through her lashes at me. I guess I know how she would feel to have something. She paused. Something so lovely. Spoiled. I turned away, feeling like I had eaten rocks. So it's true, Rana whispered. Inhaling audibly, she spoke again, stronger. You went out with Debbie Mann. I didn't answer. Squinting in the dapple sunlight, she gazed out, searching the shrubbery for new words. I hear that the date was quite, successful. Turning to look at her, I tried to assume a cold, disconnected air, but when I caught sight of that innocent, exposed nape, tears starting in my eyes and my throat closed, I said, well, you never know who to believe, do you? I've always believed you, not a hint of a whine or a whimper. Maybe that was a mistake, I said. Christ, I hated myself. I can't figure it, Young. We had that. Sex, and I thought it was special, just us, you know? Why would you want someone else? And of all the someone else's, why Debbie Mann? It seems beneath you. There's not much that's beneath me, Rana. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she looked through them straight into my black heart. There's a missing piece here. What is it, Young? A tear escaped Rana's left eye and rolled down her cheek. I sighed and sat on the bench next to her. I knew I couldn't do this, and I knew you wouldn't go for the story, but I couldn't tell Rob why you wouldn't believe it. You're right, it was special, and it was just us. Rob? What's Rob got to do with this? Taking Ron's hand, I pressed it against my cheek. Your hand is so cold. I chafed her hand between my own, trying to restore the warmth. You've got to promise you won't tell anyone about this, especially not Rob. I paused. Or Simon. Simon Glass? Let me explain. You know, Rob thinks that for Simon to be elected favorite, that he's got to have the perfect date. Well, Simon has this big crush on you, and having a date with a popular girl will clinch it for him. So, I heard the sharp intake of Rana's breath. I looked up at her. She looked as if she had been slapped. Ron? So, Rob wants you to hand me over to Simon? You won't loan your books, Young. No, it's not like that, Ron. What is it then? I could hardly hear her. Look, Rob needs this. I can't explain why. That's something I can't talk about, but I have to do this for him, Ron. Can't you understand? If, Rana said, slow and quiet, If I asked you to pick between this game you and Rob are playing and, her voice shook, and me, would you do it? I hesitated a heartbeat too long. You don't have to answer, Rana said, pulling her icy hand from mine. She stood. Don't worry, young. I'll be a good sport. I won't tell anyone. The whole school will just think you're a horny shit, and Simon will have his perfect date. Simon's the one person in school who won't be using me. She turned toward the side gate. That's kind of comforting. I reached across her and put my hand over the gate handle. Ron, don't. Okay, let's drop the whole thing. I'll tell Rob to forget it. It's not worth it. It's not that easy, young. Some things can't be undone. Whether I go to the dance or not is unimportant now. The fact is that you were willing to hurt me, use me and my feelings to please Rob. You traded my trust for his. You know what, young? You're not worth it. She sighed. And you need to ask yourself why Rob wanted me. Why me? I don't think it has much to do with Simon at all. Our eyes locked in mutual misery, but beneath Rana's hurt, there was something unyielding. And right then, I knew something about Rana that I hadn't managed to see before. When she turned her back on something, it stayed turned. It was over. When I had agreed to Rob's plan, I'd done it with only my hurt and Rob's in mind. I hadn't thought about Rana's at all. I wanted to hit rewind, make this all go away, backtrack, and make myself a better person. The only way to do that now was to let her leave with dignity. I released the gate handle and stepped aside. I love you, Ron, but you deserve better than me. I'm sorry. I know, she said gently, with a tenderness that ripped me apart. Me too. She pulled the gate shut behind her. The latch clicked securely into place.